Some people are like a mirror that shows nothing back. You stand in front of them hoping to be seen, understood, and loved, but what comes back is cold silence, sharp criticism, or a twisted version of who you are. It drains you slowly. You give, and they keep taking. You explain, and they bend your words. You hurt, and they act like nothing even happened. You finally speak up, and somehow they become the victim. After a while, you start doubting yourself. You wonder if maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe you ask for too much. But deep inside, your spirit keeps whispering the truth. This is not love. This is not peace. This is not the way Christ moves. And that kind of pain cuts deep, because the people who wound us most are often the ones we trusted most. A husband, a wife, a parent, a friend, a leader, someone who says the right words but carries the wrong spirit. Someone who says they love you, yet keeps making you feel small, unseen, used, and anxious. Like you have to walk on eggshells just to survive one more conversation. That is not normal conflict. That is not a simple rough patch. That is emotional harm. That is controlling behavior. And here is the part many people miss. Jesus dealt with people like that too. We often picture him only as gentle, soft, and tender. And yes, he was all of that. But he was also strong, clear, and deeply wise. He walked among the broken, but he also walked among manipulators, liars, proud men, and people who used power in cruel ways. And when he met them, he did not fold. He did not beg for peace at any cost. He did not let himself be used up. Many people have been taught that being loving means always staying quiet. They hear phrases about mercy, patience, and turning the other cheek. And they think that means they must sit still while harmful patterns keep repeating. So they stay. They excuse what should never be excused. They call it grace when it is really fear. They call it loyalty when it is really exhaustion. But if you look closely at how Jesus dealt with toxic people, you will see something powerful. He was loving, yes, but never weak. He was merciful, but never blind. He did not allow people to play games with his mind, his purpose, or his peace. And if you stay with me here, this can change how you see your own life. One quiet but important moment says a lot. Scripture says, Jesus did not entrust himself to certain people because he knew what was in them. Let that sink in. He saw past appearances. He saw beyond polished words, fake honor, loud praise, and public performance. He knew hearts. Toxic people often wear charm like perfume. They sound right, they smile at the right time, they flatter, they impress crowds, they know how to look sincere in public and still be cruel in private. But Jesus was never fooled by image. He did not confuse charisma with character. He did not treat applause like proof of trustworthiness. That is a huge lesson for us because many of us think kindness means automatic access. We think being good means giving people chance after chance after chance, even while they keep showing us who they are. Jesus did not do that. He loved fully, but he stayed discerning. He listened, but he was not easy to manipulate. He cared, but he did not hand everyone the keys to his heart. That does not mean we should live suspicious of everyone. It does not mean love disappears and walls go up forever. It means wisdom matters. It means there is a real difference between being loving and being gullible. Jesus shows us that grace and discernment can live together in the same soul. You can be kind without being careless. You can forgive without giving endless access. You can pray for someone and still step back from them. That is not cruel. That is mature. That is healthy. And for many people, that truth feels like freedom for the first time in years. If someone keeps lying, twisting, blaming, and crossing lines, you are not wrong for noticing the pattern. You are not wrong for protecting your peace. You are not wrong for saying, I love you, but I cannot keep handing you my trust while you keep breaking it. Jesus did not entrust himself to everybody, and you do not have to either. And the next part is even harder. Because sometimes the deepest pressure does not come from strangers. It comes from family. It comes from people close enough to know your soft spots. Jesus faced that too. There was a moment when his own family came looking for him because they thought he had lost his mind. Think about that. He was walking in purpose, healing, teaching, doing the work he was sent to do, and the people closest to him wanted to pull him away from it because they did not understand him. They wanted control, not clarity. They wanted comfort, not calling. But Jesus did not stop everything to defend himself. He did not chase their approval. He did not bend his mission to calm their emotions. He stayed centered. He stayed clear. He answered without panic, and he kept moving in truth. When he was told that his mother and brothers were outside asking for him, he responded in a way that shocks many people. He asked who his real family was, then pointed to those doing the will of God, and said that these were his true brother, sister, and mother. That was not disrespect, it was direction. It was Jesus making something very clear. His first loyalty was to truth, not to emotional pressure, not to guilt, and not even to family expectation. That matters, because many people live trapped under the weight of relationships where love is used like a weapon. A parent says you owe them. A spouse says you are selfish for having needs. A friend makes you feel guilty every time you pull back. A leader calls your boundaries rebellion. And because you care, because you want peace, because you do not want to look hard or cold, you keep surrendering pieces of yourself. But Jesus did not do that. He loved deeply without letting people control his path. He did not allow confusion from others to become confusion inside him. And that is where many of us need a reset. Boundaries are not betrayal. Boundaries are not hate. Boundaries are not proof that your heart has gone bad. Sometimes a boundary is the most honest form of love left in the room. It says, I will not keep feeding this unhealthy pattern. I will not keep letting your chaos run my life. I will not keep calling this normal when it is hurting my spirit. Don't miss that. A boundary is not rejection, it is clarity. And sometimes the holiest thing you can do is refuse to keep being managed by someone else's dysfunction. Jesus showed that love does not mean endless access. Love can be warm and still be firm. Love can stay calm and still say no. There is another side of Jesus that many people avoid because it does not fit the weak version they prefer. He confronted toxic behavior directly. He did not hide behind fake niceness. He did not smile at corruption and call it misunderstanding. When he faced religious hypocrisy, especially from those who use spiritual power to burden and control others, he spoke with fire and clarity. He called out what was false. He exposed what was hidden. He named greed, pride, performance, and cruelty for what they were. Not because he was unstable, not because he had lost control, but because truth matters, and silence in the face of abuse helps the wrong people. The men he confronted looked holy on the outside, but inside they were full of selfishness, pretense, and darkness. They loved attention. They loved position. They loved being admired. They loaded others down with shame while keeping themselves comfortable. And if you have ever dealt with a narcissistic person, that pattern sounds familiar. Image on the outside, damage on the inside. They want the praise, the control, the final word, the power to define reality for everyone else. But Jesus did not spend his time begging them to understand him. He did not get pulled into endless petty fights. He spoke when needed, clearly and directly, and he stayed grounded. That is such an important lesson. You do not need to become loud, cruel, or bitter to deal with toxic people. You do not have to copy their tricks. You do not have to answer manipulation with manipulation. But you do have the right to name what is wrong. You can say, that is not true. You can say, that is unfair. You can say, you are twisting my words. You can say, I will not continue this conversation like this. That is not being unkind. That is walking in truth. There is a big difference between wild anger and righteous clarity. One wants revenge, the other wants truth. One explodes to injure, the other rises to protect. Jesus did not confront people just to win. He confronted them to expose what was destroying others. Real love does not protect lies. Real love does not pretend abuse is confusion. Real love is not passive when people are being harmed. So if someone keeps gaslighting you, shaming you, blaming you, or acting like your pain is the problem, remember this. You do not have to over-explain yourself forever. You do not have to keep proving what you know in your bones. You do not have to defend your reality to someone committed to bending it. Stay calm, stay clear, speak plain truth, then stop. That alone is power. And here is where it gets even deeper. Because one of the hardest things in painful relationships is letting go when someone rejects truth. Most tender-hearted people do not want to let go. They want resolution. They want repair. They want one last talk, one last message, one more attempt to be understood. But Jesus did not chase people who chose to reject him. He offered truth, he offered love, he extended grace, but he never forced anyone to receive it. When he sent out his followers, he told them that if a place would not welcome them, they were to leave and shake the dust off their feet. That is such a freeing image. No begging, no dragging your soul through one more closed door. No staying where truth is despised just because you are afraid to walk away. Jesus understood something many people learn too late. Not every closed heart is your assignment. Not every rejection is yours to fix. Not every broken relationship can be healed by trying harder. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you because misunderstanding you helps them keep control. Think about the rich young ruler. He came to Jesus with questions, but when truth touched the area he did not want to surrender, he walked away sad. And Jesus let him go. He did not run after him to soften the message. He did not lower the standard to keep the relationship. He loved him, and still he let him leave. That is strong love. That is clean love. That is love without desperation. Narcissistic people often survive on emotional pursuit. They want you chasing them. They want you explaining again, apologizing again, trying again, shrinking again, giving up another piece of yourself just to keep some fragile connection alive. The chase feeds the pattern. The confusion feeds the pattern. Your need for closure feeds the pattern. But Jesus did not play that game. He stood in truth, and when people walked away from truth, he kept walking in peace. That may be your invitation too. Let go of the fantasy that you can love someone into becoming someone they do not want to be. Let go of the hope that one perfect sentence will make them suddenly care. Let go of the burden of saving people from their own refusal to change. You are not the rescuer of every broken person in your life. You are not responsible for carrying their repentance, their honesty, or their healing. Your job is to be truthful. Your job is to be loving. Your job is to know when staying becomes self-betrayal. Sometimes walking away is not failure. Sometimes it is obedience. Sometimes it is the first honest step toward peace. Jesus let people go when they chose darkness over truth, distance over change, pride over surrender. That was not hate. That was release. And sometimes release is holy. Now, here is the part many caring people struggle with most: compassion without codependence. Jesus was full of compassion. His heart moved toward the sick, the suffering, the forgotten, and the wounded again and again. But his compassion was never helpless, and it was never tangled. He did not confuse mercy with rescuing people from responsibility. He did not confuse love with carrying what belonged to someone else. There is a story about a man who had been disabled for 38 years, lying near the pool, stuck in disappointment so long that hopelessness had become normal. When Jesus saw him, he asked a question that sounds almost surprising. He asked, "Do you want to get well?" At first, that sounds obvious, maybe even strange. Of course he wants healing, but Jesus was bringing the deeper issue into the light. Not everyone who suffers is ready to change. Not everyone who complains is ready for healing. Not everyone who wants relief wants responsibility. Sometimes pain becomes familiar. Sometimes dysfunction becomes identity. Sometimes people would rather stay in the pattern they know than step into the freedom that would ask something new of them. Jesus offered healing, but he did not force it. He did not drown in pity. He did not take over the man's will. He brought truth into the moment. That matters so much when dealing with manipulative people, because they often know how to use your empathy against you. They tell stories that pull you in. They cry at the right time. They apologize when they feel you slipping away. They sound broken enough to keep you close, then return to the same pattern once you lower your guard. That is not always repentance. Sometimes it is strategy wearing tears. And if you have a soft heart, that can trap you for years. You think helping means staying no matter what. You think loving means always picking them back up. You think compassion means you must keep pouring into a person who keeps using your care as fuel for their control. But Jesus never showed compassion in a way that erased truth. He helped people, but he also called them higher. He healed, but he also warned. He cared, but he did not enable. That is the model. You can be kind and still say no. You can forgive and still leave. You can care about someone's pain and still refuse to let their pain become permission for harming you. That is not a lack of love. That is mature love. That is clean love. And that kind of clarity changes everything. It means you no longer have to play the hero in someone else's cycle. You no longer have to believe that if you just endure enough, explain enough, pray enough, and bend enough, the relationship will become healthy. Maybe it will not. Maybe the clearest form of love available is truth with distance. Maybe the strongest thing you can do is stop volunteering for a role God never asked you to play. Stay with me, because this is the turning point. Jesus was compassionate, but he was never controlled by someone else's chaos. He was open-hearted, but never swallowed by it. He could stand near pain without becoming owned by it. And that is possible for you too. You do not have to harden your heart to become free. You just have to stop confusing freedom with selfishness. You just have to stop calling exhaustion faithfulness. You just have to stop naming bondage as love. That shift can save your peace, your mind, and in some cases, even your life. So when you put it all together, the pattern becomes clear. Jesus saw through masks. He did not trust everybody just because they sounded sincere. He kept boundaries even with people close to him. He spoke directly when toxic behavior needed to be exposed. He did not chase people who rejected truth. He showed real compassion without sliding into codependence. That is not cold. That is not harsh. That is wisdom wrapped in love. And if you have been living in confusion, always second-guessing yourself, always shrinking to keep the peace, always trying to earn warmth from someone who only gives control, this matters more than you know. You do not need to become mean. You do not need to become bitter. You do not need revenge. But you do need clarity. You do need courage. You do need permission to stop letting destructive people teach you what love is supposed to feel like. Love does not leave you constantly afraid. Love does not demand that truth stay silent. Love does not keep asking you to bleed so someone else can stay comfortable. Real love is honest. Real love is brave. Real love protects what is sacred. And sometimes the most Christ-like thing you can do is quietly step back, speak the truth, and refuse to keep participating in what is breaking you. If this hits something deep in you, do not ignore it. Sit with it. Pray through it. Look at the patterns in your life with open eyes. Ask yourself where you have been calling fear patience, where you have been calling silence peace, where you have been calling control love. Then start making a different choice, a clearer choice, a freer choice, because Jesus was never a doormat, and you do not have to be one either. And once that truth really settles in your spirit, everything begins to change.